Prime Minister risks losing the next election unless he makes more progress on levelling up. That is the warning from the Conservative Mayor of Tees Valley, Ben Houchen. He says the government will be punished unless new jobs and infrastructure is delivered to the regions by the leaders in his own party. Well, Ben Houchen joins me now to discuss more on his stark warning to the Prime Minister and this Conservative government. Mr Houchen, good to see you this afternoon.
Thanks for having me on.
Just looking at your area in context, Teesside, 2017, 5 Labour MPs, 1 Tory. 2019 general election, 3 Labour, 3 Tory. Those former Labour safe seats turning blue. And that was done, many would see, on the promises Boris Johnson made, linked to levelling up in the north. Since the general election, the last general election, have the people of Teesside seen any of these promises materialise?
Well, actually, I think in Teesside, we're one of the few areas that can point to tangible progress towards levelling up, whether that's the freeport that we've got now on the River Tees, the Treasury moving to Darlington, upgrades of local railway stations. There is a lot to start levelling up, and that's not to mean that it's done. There's still a long way to go, many years' worth of improvements. But my argument today is that we need to replicate what's happening in Teesside across large parts of the north of England, because in 2019, the government was elected on the promise of levelling up. Boris Johnson was given the support of local people, not just in Teesside, but across the north, because of what he did with Brexit. He delivered Brexit, and people associated with him with somebody who was going to deliver on his promises. But obviously with COVID, and rightly, that did get in the way, and that took up a lot of government time. But now we look, touch wood, to be coming towards the end of COVID. The government needs to get back on its agenda of delivering levelling up, because I think that's the thing that will really swing people's vote at the next general election.
Yeah, COVID has been seen as a distraction from the levelling up agenda. We're still going through a pandemic, but as you said, eyes are now turning to those promises. Talk to me about what levelling up means then for the wider area you're talking about outside of Teesside, because at the moment there is a cost of living crisis, for example. Would it mean more to people in the north to have help to pay their heating bills than it would be to, say, get a new train station?
Well, I think levelling up actually helps deliver on some of those issues that we're facing today. So actually levelling up on, for me, my personal opinion on phase 1 is around large infrastructure, because it's infrastructure that large parts of the north of England haven't had for decades under governments of both colours. That's better roads, it's better rail, it's more bus services. It's even infrastructure that will help enable private sector investment. And if you look for specifically at the cost of living, in particular around energy pricing, there's more that could be done by the government and people like Houchen to be able to approve more energy production, more gas production within the UK that it currently isn't. And actually a lot of that would take place in places like the north of England, creating many thousands of jobs for people in good, well-paid sectors. So all of this comes together. Phase 1 is about getting large parts of the north of England to the starting line, because there are places, including like Teesside, that don't have a metro system. We don't have a regular bus system. We don't have the fantastic infrastructure that other cities and parts of the south have. And then it allows us to give back to UK PLC, and that will, by definition, address some of those cost of living issues that you've just raised. Yeah,
people's pockets being squeezed, but the government would argue that their pockets are squeezed as well. Do you think that the government can level up and cut taxes?
And this is a really interesting argument about levelling up, because people assume if you're in favour of levelling up, you're therefore in favour of just spending huge sums of money, irrespective of come what may. And actually, it's a bit of a balance. There is going to be investment needed from the government when it talks about public infrastructure, those things that I've just talked about around rail and road and buses, etc., making sure that people can connect to those opportunities for jobs and investment. But actually enabling infrastructure will give more confidence to the private sector and international corporates and money from across the world to come and invest in the UK. That's private money coming in. That's leveraging the money that the government can put in. It creates jobs. That means more tax take. It means that we're getting more businesses setting up in the UK. So levelling up is not mutually exclusive from being able to try and keep taxes low and incentivise the private sector. Those two things go hand in hand. And Teesside's a great example of that, right? We are the architect of one of the most free market policies that this government has come up with in free ports. That doesn't require hard cash. It requires a framework that enables the private sector, which they're already doing, to come and invest money and create jobs.
So you see Teesside very much as a blueprint for perhaps those areas of the north that aren't benefiting from the levelling up agenda yet. There's quite a gap, isn't there, between now and the 2019 general election. If you look at what Labour are saying, they're sort of looking towards a general election in the summer of next year. That's not a lot of time for Boris Johnson to prove to northern voters that he's serious about levelling up. What can he do between now and then to convince them that they should still give him their vote and not turn back to Labour? Because Sir Keir Starmer last week in his New Year's speech pretty much said, you know, if you voted Conservative last time, look again at Labour.
Well, you know, we've talked about COVID and the fact that that's put a delay on the government plans for levelling up. But what we actually need is people need to see physical and tangible progress towards it by the time of the next general election. And people are reasonable, people are mature and grown up. They recognise that the gap between the north and the south of England is not going to be bridged by the time of the next general election, whether that's next year or in 2024.
But what is physical and tangible that can be done between now and the summer of 2023?
Well, a huge amount, and you could argue whether the election is going to be in 2023, but it's still a year to be able to get spades in the ground. People need to see things starting. They need to see that their infrastructure is getting better. It doesn't need to be better. They just need to see that those physical improvements are real and tangible. They're not just announcements. They're not just headlines, that people can see when they go out their front door, things are changing. There are more jobs in their local area. They can feel that their area is improving and moving towards progress. It doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be achieved. And that allows the government to get goodwill with the public. It allows them to build up some goodwill to then buy into what is a very long-term project in levelling up. OK,
it's a question of goodwill, which is a question of priorities from the government, but those priorities set by the leader. It's a question of leadership. There's a Sky News poll of the Conservative membership that said that 34% of members say Boris Johnson should stand down. That's compared to 9% in July 2020. Where do you stand on that? Do you think he is the right man to lead the Conservatives?
I mean, I could be wrong. I've been busy, but I think I saw some of the polls out this morning. I think the majority of Conservative members still think that he's the right man for the job. And I must be honest, I am absolutely one of those people. Boris personally connects with people in a way that most politicians can't. And if people can see progress towards, like I say, the levelling up agenda that he set out, then people will vote for Boris again. You know, people want to be proven right. They want to know that when they voted for the first time ever for the Conservatives, that they did the right thing by changing what was a lifetime habit. So people want to do it, but we need to give them the excuse. And that means spades in the ground, tangible differences. And I do think that Boris is the right man for the job.
And you trust him to deliver on those promises, even though he hasn't done yet for large parts of the north? Because, again, I refer back to the Sky News poll, 39% of the membership don't trust him with the truth. Do you trust him with the truth? Do you trust him to deliver on his promises?
Well, I do think he will. And I think, having been a mayor himself, he understands the need to be able to deliver tangible things on the ground. I think it's absolutely fair to say that the last 2 years, and rightly so, have been completely consumed by the pandemic and getting through COVID. And like you say, we're not quite there yet, but it feels to me like we're coming towards the end. And now my call today is, look, Prime Minister, you've got 2 years. It's not the 4 years that you would have wanted to concentrate on levelling up, but you now need to deliver on that. You need to start showing that progress. And I think he will do it. But today is a call to get him to refocus, because, you know, I've just been listening to your programme today, and there's lots of other noise, there's lots of other things going on, but levelling up was the thing that got him elected. It was the reason that people voted for him for the first time in large parts of the north of England, and he can't forget that. He's got to deliver on it.
OK, Ben Houchen, Mayor of Teesside, really good to talk to you this afternoon here on Sky News. Thank you.